Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out and joining me today. My name is Brandon Minnick, and in this session, we're talking about how to easily add GenAI into your .NET apps, specifically using Microsoft.Extensions.AI. And actually, kind of curious, has anybody started using this library yet? Oh, you guys are in for a treat. It's incredible. And I'm not just saying that. We're going to write a lot of code today. Not a lot of slides, mostly code. But the reason I love this so much is because I'm not an AI expert. I'm actually a mobile app developer. I've been making apps for iOS and Android for about 10 years now, always in C#, using Xamarin, now .NET MAUI. Actually, I used to work at Xamarin and then stayed on at Microsoft for about 7 years during the .NET MAUI transition. But yeah, it feels like over the last year, definitely the last few months, everybody's asking for AI in their apps. Like every manager meeting, every CEO, CTO, client, customer is like, we need to add more AI into our apps. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but like, I don't know how to do it. Like, I've never trained a model before. I've never vectorized a database or tokenized whatever. I don't even really know what those words mean. I do a little bit, but I recently discovered this library, Microsoft.Extensions.AI, and it's incredible. It's literally so easy that somebody like me, who has no idea how this stuff works, can add GenAI to their app. So what we're going to build today is basically a ChatGPT clone in a .NET MAUI app, and we'll add in our GenAI, and I'll show you how everything works. But before we get going, I want to highlight a couple links that you'll see on the bottom of the slides today. So here on the bottom right, this is a web page that I put together for us. This is where you can find everything from today's session. So make sure to take out your phone if you haven't already, grab a picture of this slide, grab the QR code, it'll take you to the same website. But this is where you can find everything we're covering today. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of code, but you don't have to worry about memorizing any of it because the completed code's already there on GitHub. I've linked it on this web page. This is also where you can find the slides. This session is being recorded, so once the NDC conference has published it to YouTube, I'll add the link there as well. So as long as you got this link, you can sit back and relax, just enjoy the talk. And then once the recording's been published, you can share this link around with friends and coworkers who maybe couldn't be here today, and then they'll become essentially GenAI experts just like us. Now, here on the bottom left, this is my Twitter handle. You can find me online at The Code Traveler. I'll be around the conference the rest of today. I'll be at the party tonight. I'll be back tomorrow. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me when we bump into each other in the hallways. But my direct messages are always open. If you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But let's jump into it. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're basically focusing on this library right here, Microsoft.Extensions.AI. And as you can see, the best way to think about it is like this giant interface for whatever GenAI service we're using. Is anybody already using a GenAI service at Amazon Bedrock, Azure AI Foundry, OpenAI? Okay, Olama, yeah, a couple folks. So if you've played around with those already in C#, you probably know like each of these have their own SDKs, and you can add those into your app. But then when you write your code, it's all very specific to, say, Amazon Bedrock. And so what if one day your manager comes and goes, hey, we just got $100,000 credits to Azure. We're moving everything to Azure. And it's like, OK, well, great. Now I got to rip out all of that work I just did. But the cool thing with Microsoft Extensions AI is not only does it make it easy to write the code and implement it in our apps, it also makes it super service agnostic. So when that day comes where we want to change out a model for a newer model, or we get a better deal on AWS over Azure, we can just rip it out and really not touch any of our code except for about 2 or 3 lines that we use to initialize it. So let's jump into the code and let's get started. Now, like I mentioned, I've created a little ChatGPT clone. So this is a .NET MAUI app. And what we have here is just a chat page. And it says, ask anything down here. So we can ask it anything like, what is the square root of 17? And it'll do nothing right now, because we haven't implemented any GenAI yet. So when we click go, once we implement the code, that's when it'll reach out to our model. The model will respond, and hopefully, in the future, give us that answer to what's the square root of 17. But if you're new to .NET MAUI, let me show you around the app a little bit. So We always initialize .NET MAUI in this MAUI program.cs file, which if you've done any ASP.NET Core, Blazor, this will all look really familiar because it's the same builder pattern where we say create builder, builder.services.add singleton, all this fun stuff. But in .NET MAUI, we always use the model view model architecture, which essentially just means we're going to separate our view, our UI code, from our view model, which is our business logic. So what this looks like in here is it's just a one-page app. So I've got my chat page. And to give you a little tour of how I created this, this is just a grid where I've defined 4 rows. So we have our output text row here. We have our input text row down here. We have our button row below that. And we have our indicator row, which is where that little spinning indicator will come up when we click go. And each of these rows, I've defined a height, so 20 pixels, 40 pixels, 40 pixels. And then star just means take up the rest of the space. So we've got all this space up here for the LLMs to respond, give us the best answers they can. And then the way we put things into these rows is we just define the children of this grid. So we've got the label where the text appears that is using bindings to talk to the view model. So in our view model, we'll be adding things to the output text. And this is how the output text knows, or rather how the UI knows to print the output text back in the view. And we put that in our output text row. Likewise, we have our entry, which is just this text box down here, where we also have a binding to the input text. So this is the user-provided text that we'll be using to pass into the model in our view model. And then we've got a button. The button has a command that when we click it, it'll fire off this method or this command called submit input text in our view model. And then below that is our activity indicator that'll appear here and start spinning anytime we're making a request to the internet. But where we're going to be spending most of our time today is inside the view model here. And this is where you can see those properties that we were just talking about, like output text, input text. This is the submit input text command that fires when we click the go button. And you can see here why nothing really happened, because all I'm doing is saying task.delay for a second, and yeah, we didn't do anything yet. So we're going to spend a lot of time in here. But first, we need to initialize our GenAI client. So what we're going to do, we're going to add that into our builder.services service collection. But like I said, I'm not an expert in this, and I'm kind of lazy. I still say good engineer is a lazy engineer, or a lazy engineer is a good engineer. That's probably the better way to put it. So what I've done ahead of time was I spun up a Azure OpenAI instance in Azure. And when you do that, then you get this option to jump into the Azure AI Foundry portal, which is really where you can select what models you want to use and start building stuff. So if we go back to the Home tab here in the Azure AI Foundry, this is where we'll find the info we need to connect our app to Azure. So this is the API key here that I'm not going to show, because I can't afford that if somebody steals my API key. And this is our Azure OpenAI endpoint that we'll add into our client when we initialize it. And since we're building a ChatGPT clone today, we can come to this chat playground. And I want to show you this kind of cool shortcut that I discovered, because the first thing you got to do is you have to deploy a model. So it says create a new deployment. That just means, hey, what model do you want to use? So you would say select from base models. And this is where you can select from any of the models that I'm sure you've heard about in the news, or if you read like tech websites or Hacker News. So I've already selected a couple. I have O3 Mini and GPT-4.1 Nano already spun up. So I'll go ahead and click on GPT-4.1 Nano. And then the cool trick here, so that you don't have to memorize any code, you can just click on View Code. And I'm going to let it know that we're writing code in C# today. And if we look down here, it gives us the code that shows us how to initialize our client. So this is great. But the only downside is all this code after here, we're not going to use it, because this is all code specific to this Azure AI Open SDK, whereas we're going to be using Microsoft.Extensions.AI. So let's copy-paste some of this code, and let's bring this into our app. And what I'll do, I'll just create a method here called create_chat_client. And then let's paste in that code, get rid of the line numbers. And let's see, this should be an API key credential. And so I've got Azure OpenAI credentials. So went ahead and already got my API key in here. So again, I don't have to share it with the world and risk paying $1 million to Microsoft at the end of the month. I also grabbed the endpoint. So we'll pass that in here. And now, this is where we're going to split off. Because right now, all these classes we're using, if I can get IntelliSense, all right. There's the IntelliSense. So all these classes so far in the Azure AI OpenAI NuGet package. Whereas here, I'm going to say return the Azure client.getChatClient, and then I'm going to say as IChatClient. So real quick, let me show you the libraries we're working with. There we go, right here. So we started out in the Azure AI OpenAI NuGet package. This is how we initialized our Azure OpenAI client. And then there's a NuGet package called Microsoft.Extensions.AI that obviously is specific to OpenAI, and it provides extension methods for the Azure OpenAI NuGet package. So this is where we get that extension method that says as IChatClient. And of course, we got our Microsoft.Extensions.AI NuGet package. So when we come back here to our Maui program.cs file, you can see this IChatClient. This is inside of Microsoft.Extensions.AI. So this is the only code specific to our platform. This is the code that when our boss comes to us and says, oh, we're leaving Azure for AWS, these 3 lines of code are the only things we need to change because we're never going to touch those platform-specific libraries again. So now that we have this method, I can say builder.services, and I can say add chat client, and then I'll just pass in the IChatClient here. So now it's in our service collection, which means I can go to my view model and use dependency injection to just inject it straight in here. So we'll say IChatClient, and then I want this to be read-only. So let's go ahead and create a read-only variable, chat client equals client, perfect. And now we can start writing some AI code. So we'll get rid of this fake code here that just said task.delay for a second, and we'll say await for each var response in chat client.get streaming response async. And then in here is where we pass in the input text from our user. So whatever the user types in, we'll pass in the input text. And then since I have a cancellation token, I'll be a good developer and pass that in here as well. And now what's going to happen is every time we get a response, and we'll get response backs in chunks. So with the await for each loop, it means we don't have to wait for the model to finish calculating everything and wait for everything to come back. We can get it all basically streamed to us in real time. And so the way we'll output that to the UI is we'll just say response or output text plus equals response text, essentially concatenating every time, and that's it. We just implemented GenAI app. Like, thanks for coming, guys. Like, that's literally how easy it is to do it. And just to show you, we'll run the app. And now we can ask it again. What did we say last time? What is the square root of 17? And look at that. It came back with an actual real answer, and I assume that's right. Let's see, 17 to 0.5? Yeah, nailed it, 4.123. So looks like things are working. This is pretty cool, and we can ask it anything, right? Like, I could say something crazy like, write a poem about NDC conferences in the form of a haiku. Oh, check that out. So voices rise in hope. NDC hopes for the world, change blooms with each talk. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And actually, let's see, let's say add a second verse. Let's see if it can do even more. Oh, well, so now it says, of course, but can you provide the lyrics of the first verse first? So what this means is it has no idea what we just asked it, which is kind of annoying, right? Like, I thought we were going to build a pretty cool haiku here, but what's going on is we're just passing in the input text, and we're not tracking any of its chat history. So no worries, we can absolutely fix that. So all we need to do is create a list of chat messages. Go ahead and initialize it up here. And then instead of just passing in the user's input each time, we'll add that input to our chat messages. And then we'll pass it in here. Oh, and actually, I lied. We actually have to create a new chat message object. So we want to let it know that the chat role is a user and that this input text is coming from the user. And let's run this again and see what happens. OK, so let's ask again. Write a haiku about NDC conferences. Let's see if we get a new one back. Oh, yeah. NDC gathers minds. Ideas bloom in wide halls, future shaped in speech. That's not too bad. And so now, if I say, great, let's see, write a second verse. Let's try it again. Write a second verse. And we're not getting it back. What are we missing here? Tell you what, let's clean out our folder here. Sometimes you just got to clean out those bin and obj files to get things working. So we got our chat messages. We're passing in the chat messages. Everything should reappear here. Let's even go into the terminal, get real nuclear with this. Let's see, GitHub. Now wait. I've been noticing this new version latest version of JetBrains was acting a little funny on me lately when I was practicing some stuff. So we'll just wipe out all the cache, rebuild it, cross our fingers, see what happens, right? There we go. All right, run it again. OK, so let's stick with the haikus. Let's go write a haiku about NDC conferences. NDC words unfold. Innovation sparks new paths. Future's voice resounds. Man, these are pretty good. All right, add a second verse. There we go. Like I said, sometimes you just gotta clean out the cache. All right, so what do we get in the second verse? Threads of progress weave, connecting minds worldwide. Future shaped today. Oh man, that is great. So now we have a chat client. It has our history, and as you can probably guess, if you're creating this app and the user wanted to create a new session or delete the old history, all we have to do is clear out this chat messages list, and boom, we're starting from scratch. Now, one thing you might notice is I said chatrole.user here, which kind of indicates there's other chat roles. So one thing we can do, instead of telling it to write us a haiku every time, we can, when we initialize this, I'll add in a new chat message to start, but the chat role here, I'm going to say system. So now this is me telling the model instructions. And so I can instruct the model to respond however I want. And so in this case, I'll say always respond in the form of a haiku. Let's tell it your answers. Let's say your response should be funny and witty, because why not? And your answers should always be truthful, because I don't want it lying to me. How am I supposed to know what the square root of 17 is if it's just making it up? So essentially what we've just done is we've kind of trained our model. We've told it how we always want it to respond. It's got to be funny, it's got to be witty, it's got to be truthful, but most importantly, in the form of a haiku. So what do you think? If we ask it, what is the square root of 17 in a haiku. Almost 4 point, a tiny bit less, quite shy. Math's silent whisper. OK, let me tell you this. I'll say use as many stanzas as necessary to provide a full and complete answer. Let's throw that one in there too, because I'll bet it can get a little closer than that. Let's see. All right, how about what's the square root of 17 now? Well, still only gave us one verse. That's OK. Let's try something else. I ate cereal for breakfast this morning, so like, how many calories are in a bowl of cereal? There we go. Now we got multiple stanzas. Let's see. A bowl of cereal. Calories vary, my friend. Less sugar, more fun. Few with milk or none. Approximate, say 100. Depends on the brand. So I've been having a lot of fun with this today. So this is really cool. But when we start thinking about it, and I'll guarantee you, as soon as you implement something like this and you show it to your manager, they're going to be like, oh, this is so cool. Can we have it respond about the user? You're like, does it know what the user data is, and can it analyze what we have in a database? And just like, oh, Jesus, man, I just learned how to do this. I'm not an AI expert, but let me show you something really cool. But I'll tell you what, let's first say, what's something it definitely doesn't know? So let's ask it who I am. Let's say, who is Brandon Minnick, and what are his hobbies? So, maybe it knows me from the internet. It knows I'm a speaker. And OK, so Brandon's code and dreams, tech talk and gaming delight, hobbies bloom in streams. So yeah, it's probably caught some of my YouTube streams where I code. And that's cool. But those aren't my hobbies. I mean, I do code for fun. I love writing code. But it definitely doesn't know things that, like, I love playing water polo. I love going skiing. I love playing chess. And so what we can do is I'm going to create a method down here that's going to return a list of strings. And I'll call it getHobbies. And then in here, I'll put my favorite hobbies. So water polo, played water polo in high school and college, and still play nowadays in California with my local club. I love going skiing in Tahoe. Any chance I can get, I'll drive up to Tahoe. And then yeah, chess. So if anybody is on chess.com, hit me up. You can find me as the Code Traveler. I always love playing. And what we're also going to do, we're going to add an attribute here called description. And just to show you real quick, because I think this is kind of cool, this is actually in the base class library. This is the description attribute from system.component model. But the description, we're just going to describe what this function does. So in this case, I'll say that this returns a list of Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies. Not too bad. And so now what we can do, we can create a chat options object. So I'll say new chat options. And again, this chat options object, Microsoft.Extensions.AI. This chat message object, Microsoft.Extensions.AI. And if we go up here, we haven't used anything from our Azure OpenAI NuGet package. This is all in the Microsoft.Extensions.AI library, which again means we can rip out Azure, replace it with AWS or Olama, anything we want, anytime our managers make us. So anyways, here in chat options, we say tools. And we use this thing called the AI function factory. And I'll point it to my getHobbies method that I just wrote below. Now, this is essentially letting our GenAI model know that there's a function called getHobbies that it can now call. And it doesn't have to know what the function does under the hood. Because all it cares is that it's going to return a list of strings, and it's told, just in plain text here, that this returns a list of Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies. And so there's just one more step we have to do, and we have to come back to our IChatClient, And we got to edit this just a little bit. So let's do it like this. Let's say var client. There we go. And then what we're going to do, we're going to use this thing called a IChatClient builder. So we'll pass our client in there. So that's the same client that we already had. Make sure we new it up. And then we'll say use function invocation. So this is essentially granting it access to invoke the functions that we've told it about. And then when we say build, that returns the same IChatClient object that we had built earlier. Now, I do want to show you one more thing, because you don't have to use an existing method. We can actually just pass in an anonymous method here. So I could say AI function factory.create, and then I could just create an anonymous method that's a new, well, yeah, let's do another list of strings, and let's return, how about favorite colors, right? So let's go orange, let's go blue, let's go white. And the only difference here is we also now have to give it a name. So we have to say that the name of this function is favorite colors. And then we inline here, we also give it a description. So I'll say returns a list of Brandon Minnick's favorite colors. So both ways work. And actually, if you look at the IntelliSense here for AI function.create, you can see it just takes in a delegate. So you can pass in any method, or you could even just create an anonymous method right here on the fly. Both are going to work great. And we added it to our Maui program, right? So boom. So let's run this again. And I'm going to do something cool. I'm going to put a breakpoint on this method. So if you remember, last time I asked it, what are Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies? And it was like, he codes, and sometimes he streams online. Well, now, let's ask it the same thing. Like, bro, nice, easy softball, right? What are Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies? Oh, goodness. We're going to have to clean the bin and obj folders every time, huh? I mean, this is a cool poem, though. I do have a dog, and I do love hiking. Now I'm getting a little creeped out. It still doesn't know about water polo, chess, and skiing, though. So let's come back to Finder. Yeah, like I said, I don't know why JetBrains has been doing this to me lately, but hopefully they'll get that cleared out. Luckily, I've got a nice little script that deletes the bin and obj folders without me having to do it manually. So clear those out. Let's rebuild it. We'll keep the breakpoint here. Guess I post too many pictures of hiking with my dog. All right, so run the app again. All right, so let's try it again. So what are Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies? Oh, it's not hitting it. What did we miss? Oh, oh my goodness. Okay. This chat options, we're not doing anything with it. We should probably do something with it. Okay, so we just have to add the chat options into here, and now it'll know about my favorite hobbies. Oh, goodness. All right, third time's the charm. We still have our breakpoint on. It's weird typing my name so many times. Here we go, fingers crossed. Boom! Look at that. This blows my mind, because we never told it to call this method. We just said, hey, this method exists, and it returns a list of Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies. We didn't even wire anything up. The model figured this out, and it's reading this list. And so let's go ahead and resume running it. And look at that. Now it's hobbies brew and flow, water polo, skis, chess play, colors paint as show. I guess it also included my favorite colors. So that was a pretty easy question, super softball, right? It literally said, what are Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies? So let's see. Let's say in January, what would Brandon Minnick likely be doing? Coding or snowball? Okay, so it did pick up skiing, but Close enough. We're working with GenAI stuff, right? Sometimes it gives us what we want, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I forget to add code to the app. You know, we all make mistakes. But what's really cool about this is, yes, like, obviously I'm just pointing it to this hard-coded list of strings, and it's pulling these results back. But this can be added to any function, any method in your app. So if you have a method that uses HTTP to make an API call from a REST API and pull data back, then you can add this description on it, tell your model about it, and it'll run HTTP and make that API call for you and get that data. Or like we were talking about earlier, when your manager's like, oh, cool, like, can we customize this for each user? And you're like, oh, man, I really wish you wouldn't have said that. Well, if you have a method that calls your local database, well, then it can pull the user's info from the local database, and you have now customized it for your user. So again, without ever really, me training a model or vectorizing a database or whatever tokens, we basically just trained a model on local data and to always respond in the haiku, which I think makes me a GenAI expert. So that's pretty cool. Now, I know I've been throwing a lot of code at you guys, so let's do a quick review before we get into the next topic. The first one, so IChatClient. So this is how we escape from the service-specific implementation. So if you're using Amazon Bedrock, if you're using Azure OpenAI, if you're using Ollama, they will have an as-chat-client extension method that you'll call. So really, the only thing specific to your platform are these couple lines of code. And as soon as we say as IChatClient, we've escaped, and we're now in the world of Microsoft.Extensions.AI. And to add that to a dependency injection, you can just say builder.services.add-chat-client, or you can always just say builder.services.add-singleton and pass it in like you normally would. That's totally cool, too. Chat history. So like we saw the first go around, it didn't remember anything we said until we created that list of chat messages. So if you want to retain a chat history, have a list of chat messages, use chatrole.user to let the model know this is what the user's asking about. And then every time you send a new request to the model, you just pass in that list. And it'll remember all of the history that you've had. And likewise, if you want the user to be able to clear the history, just clear the list. Easy as that. Chatrole.system. So this is where we can prompt the LLM. This is how we can tell it to always respond in the form of a haiku and be funny and be witty. And so the way I like to do it is when I initialize my list of chat messages, this is where I put my chatrole.system prompt at the very beginning. I don't know if it needs to be at the top of the chat list, but it makes me feel nice. Plus, it also makes it easy to find. And lastly, the function invocation, probably the most powerful, coolest thing I've ever seen in code that I've written, where it can just call functions that we've written and just figure it out. And so again, the way we do that is we use our chat options. Don't forget to pass that into your get streaming async response, otherwise you're not going to get what you expect back. Don't make the same mistake I did. And then also, don't forget that you have to explicitly say use function invocation. That's essentially what turns on the ability, it kind of grants Microsoft.Extensions.AI the access to run your code. OK, so now, everybody's favorite topic, unit testing. And this is where things get weird, because I don't know about you, but like adding GenAI into an app, we just added non-deterministic functions into our mobile app. And that means if I run a unit test, I can't expect the same result to come back every time. Like, we asked it, 3 or 4 times to write a poem about NDC, and it gave us 3 or 4 really good poems, but they were all different. So it's not like I could expect a certain string back and just compare the strings. So how does this work? Well, again, we're kind of wading into this weird world of uncertainty, and I'm not sure how much I like it, but it does work. But stick with me, because what Microsoft's done, they've trained their own LLM to evaluate responses that come back from our LLMs. So there's all these evaluators. There's relevance. So like, let's say we ask it a question about a rabbit. The relevance evaluator, we would tell it, hey, we're asking a question about a rabbit. We expect things like fur, long ears, whiskers in the description. And so if the GenAI model that we're using comes back about something about robots and nothing to do with rabbits, then the relevance evaluator will basically, well, it'll fail. Well, it'll work, but what it'll do, it rates it on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 means it's not relevant at all. Like, hey, you got something back about robots. I think you were asking about rabbits. And then a 5 would be perfect. It's like, hey, it just described a rabbit perfectly. And so there's all these evaluators, completeness, retrieval, fluency, coherence, equivalence. So let's jump into the code. I'll show you how to spin one of these up. And yeah, we can do the equivalence evaluator, since it already knows about my favorite hobbies now. So let's jump over to our unit test project. And let me show you these NuGet packages as well. And again, all these NuGet packages, I have links to them on my website. I'll give you another chance to grab that link before we end. But here, we're looking at Microsoft.Extensions.AI.evaluation, evaluation.quality, and I haven't shown this in the slides yet, but then we'll also talk about evaluation.safety. So for our first test, what did I say we'll do? We'll do an equivalence test, that's right. So we'll just call it equivalence test. And I don't think that's how you spell it. I should pick an easier word to spell. There we go. All right, equivalence test. We'll do arrange act assert because we're good developers. OK, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to spin up a equivalence evaluator. And we'll say new equivalence evaluator. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an equivalence evaluator context. So this is where we're going to tell the equivalence evaluator what to expect. So in this case, we want to say that Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies are water polo, skiing, and chess. So now, whatever response gets back when we test our model and we ask it about my favorite hobbies, Microsoft's LLM that they've trained in this equivalence evaluator will basically use its LLM to read what I expected, look at the response that comes back, and do its LLM magic to make sure those are equivalent. So what else do we need to do? We need to create our chat options. Chat options, and this is where we'll add in those tools. And this is where we'll say AI function factory create, and we'll point it to, was it chat, view model, get hobbies. There we go. And now, let's see, can we act? Nope, we need to create chat messages. So var chat message, new chat message, user, what are Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies? Whew. OK. So the way this works is we're going to first get the response back from our model. So I've already created my chat client. So just to show you, I've got a base class here for my test. So I've already spun up chat client. It's basically using the same code that we have in our .NET MAUI app. And so we'll just say chat client. And instead of streaming response, we'll just say get response. So it'll give us the entire response all at one time. So we'll pass in the chat message, pass in those chat options, and make sure we await it. And now that we have the response from our model, we go to our equivalence evaluator. So let's see, we'll say equivalence evaluator, and then we'll say evaluate async. So this returns an evaluation result. So we'll say var result equals equivalence evaluate async. And in here, come on, IntelliSense, there we go. So we'll pass in a couple of things. So we'll pass in the message that we sent to our model. So there's our chat message. We'll pass in the response we get back. There we go. And then we pass in the chat configuration. So this is just an object called chat configuration, where we pass in the chat client. And this basically lets Microsoft's LLM know what model we're using, how we configured it, and it helps with the evaluation. And then Lastly, we have to pass in our evaluation context. So let's pass in that equivalence evaluator context. Boom. Now we have a result back from the model. So again, the way this works is it provides a numeric metric. So I'll just say metric equals, and this result is basically just a dictionary. So I'll pull this numeric metric out of the dictionary, and the key that we're going to use to get the value from the dictionary is the name of the evaluator. So we can say equivalence evaluator.name. That pulls this value, which will range from 1 to 5 from the dictionary. And finally, we can now do our assert. So we can assert that the metric value is, let's say, greater than or equal to 4. So again, the value, if it's 1, it means there's no equivalence. Like, your model gave you back something, and I don't know what it's talking about. 5 means, wow, it gave you back exactly the right answer, exactly what you gave me. So I'm going to say, as long as it's at least a 4, I'll be happy. So let's go ahead and build this. Let's run our unit tests, and let's see what happens. Look at that, success. So let me just show you, we'll put a breakpoint in here. Boop, there we go. So I just wanted to come in here and peek, because like, what was its response? Oh, the response was literally Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies are water polo, skiing, and chess. So what are Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies? Expect back, Brandon Minnick's favorite hobbies are water polo, skiing, and chess. It nailed it. The capitalization was a little different. But if we come through here, the value was a 5. So it nailed it. That was great. So like I said, there's all sorts of these equivalence, or not just equivalence, evaluators available in Microsoft.Extensions.AI Evaluation.Quality. And so just since we've got a couple minutes left, but not too many. I'll just run through these in the slides. So like relevance evaluator, you can see here, you also start to see a pattern where it's basically the same formula every time. We new up an evaluator. If it needs context, we'll add a context. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But with the relevance evaluator, we say evaluate async. We get that numeric metric back. And then we assert that it's, in this case, greater than or equal to 4, which again, 4 is good, 5 is excellent. And there's also, I didn't show this, there's an interpretation.rating is an enum. So we can say that we expect this to be an exceptional evaluation. This one's a little hard. I don't usually use this for my unit tests, because sometimes you get a 4, sometimes you get a 5. But you can also, if you know that this should be perfect and there's no way it can mess it up, then you can tell it what evaluation rating it wants back. So for example, let's see, evaluation rating dot. And so it looks like there's unknown, 1 is inconclusive, 2 is unacceptable, 3 is poor, 4 is average, 5 is good, and 6 is exceptional. All right, and just one more, just to really drive home how very repetitive all of these unit tests and all these evaluators are, because really once you get the hang of one of them, all of them are going to be the same way. So this one's completeness. So the question I asked the model in my chat message was, give me the first 10 numbers of the Fibonacci sequence. So here in my completeness evaluator context, I tell it the first 10 numbers of the Fibonacci sequence are 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. And with this one, I would expect it to be perfectly complete. But again, just like we did last time, we get the response from our chat client. We pass that response into the evaluator along with the chat message that we asked, along with our chat configuration of our chat client, along with our list of our completeness evaluator contexts. And then we look to see that numeric result. And in this case, looks like we're still checking for 4. So again, these unit testing, they're a little weird to wrap your head around. You know, like the first time I saw this code, I was like, I don't get it. Like, what's an evaluator? What's a context? But once you write 1 or 2, they're all basically the same. All right, so the next library I want to talk about is Microsoft.Extensions.AI Evaluation Safety, because what we've been checking for basically so far is just accuracy. But if we're implementing this in our app, especially if it's an app for our business, and we don't want to get fired, these are incredibly important. So the first thing I would recommend would be to prompt your model with that chat user or chat role.system, like we did in, for mine I said, write a haiku just to be funny. But in yours, you should absolutely include information about, don't respond with anything about self-harm or violence or sexual content, because you don't want the users getting anything back by that. And again, what Microsoft's done is they've trained a bunch of LLMs on how to detect this stuff. So just like with our equivalence evaluator, just like with our coherence evaluators, our quality evaluators, these basically work the same way. Although there are some cool ones like code vulnerability. I wonder how good that is, right? Like, does it really know if I write code that's vulnerable? And maybe I could just use this to unit test my whole code base? I don't know, maybe. Because we can pass in functions, right? So yeah, here's all my code. Is it good? But also, like even protected materials. So if you have private company data that you don't want to be exposed to the world, you can also make sure that the LLM isn't giving anything bad or anything like that back. So I won't jump into the code. We'll stay up here in the slides because it's the same pattern. But as you can see here, we have a violence evaluator, and then we pass in a chat message to our chat client. We get the result back, and then we evaluate it using our evaluate async, passing in the chat message, the response, the chat client configuration, and then just like we did last time, we get the metric back. And in this case, I say less than or equal to 1. I don't think it can go below 1. So 1 just means there's no violence. And so if I'm writing unit tests for an app that I'm making for a company, I'm going to make sure there's no violence in there and that every time we pass with a 1. But let me show you something, because there's some fine print that I stumbled upon actually just this morning. So let's see. Yeah, so this is the website that I put together for us. So like you see, the slides, the recording's coming soon. Here's where you can get the completed code that we've just written together. But also, there's this link to is that the NuGet package? Yeah, I want the link to the docs. So we got links to the NuGet package and the docs. Why not? And if we scroll down here, this is where it shows basically everything I just showed you on the slide. And if I'm being honest, I basically just copy-pasted this table into the slides. But what I want to show you is if we dig down into the equivalence evaluator, it tells us what it is, which we already know this now. It measures the degree to which the response is being evaluated, similar to the supplied ground truth, which is just what we put in the evaluator context. And like I said a minute ago, the score is always going to be between 1 and 5. 1's a poor score, 5's an excellent score. But the fine print is down here. This prompt, or the prompt that equivalence evaluator uses, has been tested against and tuned to work well with the following models. So, using this evaluator with a model from the following list is likely to produce the best results. And that list is currently a list of 1. And I didn't know this before I was spinning up my models. So yeah, the first time I was using, I think, O3 Mini, and it wasn't getting the best results back. And so it wasn't until I switched over to GPT-4, actually totally coincidentally, I was just looking at like what model's the cheapest, because I don't want to have to pay too much for this. And that's when I stumbled upon this fine print. So I hope, and I'm sure that the awesome engineers at Microsoft will keep these docs up to date. But before you come in here to test your model, make sure your model's on this list. So in this case, that's why I'm using GPT-4. And hopefully they'll train more models so that we can unit test the latest, greatest stuff. But your mileage may vary. I guess you might be rolling the dice a little bit if you're using any other model than that's on this one model list. OK. And let's see, one more cool thing. We won't do this in the code, but as soon as you implement this, you're going to have a PM that's going to want a beautiful dashboard with greens and reds so that they can look at it and take credit for all of our work. And we can give that to them because there's Microsoft.Extensions.AI evaluation console. So in your CI/CD pipeline, you type in these, install the .NET tool and then just you can run this AI eval report, and then your PMs can look here and see that everything's still green and all the changes that we've made to our app aren't returning anything with violence or sexual content, and make sure everything's accurate. And you know how they like this. Otherwise, they're going to be emailing you every day, like, hey, is everything still working? Are unit tests passing? And you just be like, hey, here's a link. OK, so shameless plug. This has nothing to do with AI. But if you're interested in learning more about .NET MAUI, I've published a couple courses on dometrain.com where you can literally go from never using .NET MAUI before with the Getting Started course, and then there's this deep dive course, which combined are basically brain dump of 10 years of mobile app development experience. It's all my battle scars, all the lessons I learned, all the mistakes I made, and all the best practices for you based off of those lessons learned. So if you're interested in learning more about .NET MAUI, check out dometrain.com. And I also recently published a course this year on asynchronous programming. So if you want to get into async await, if you want to look at how the compiler generates code, if you want to learn how does Rosalind even know how to use the await keyword, all that nitty-gritty stuff that maybe one guy in your team knows, and he's the one that has to solve those weird bugs. Well, I got a course for you, and you can become that guy in the team and get, I guess, all the bugs assigned to you then. All right, so now's your chance. If you haven't already taken a picture of this slide, this is the QR code that takes you to codetraveler.io/Microsoft.Extensions.AI. This is where you can find everything we just covered. So the slides are available there for you, the links to all the NuGet packages we talked about, links to the Microsoft docs, links to the open source code. And then, of course, once this video is published, I'll add a link to that video there so that you can use it, you can share it with your friends and colleagues, and you can help them become GenAI experts just like us. Thank you. All right, we got about 5 minutes. What questions do you have? Ask the AI expert.
Hello. Okay. The functions that the AI can call on your behalf, or like if you set them up, is there a way to pass certain parameters somehow to them, or some kind of context?
Oh, good question. I don't know. Maybe. So I know, like, under the hood, it's using reflection to figure out all this stuff and to call it. I'll bet it's smart enough to figure that out, but I haven't tried it. But yeah, maybe if you had a name of a parameter. Oh wait, no, I have seen it before. I won't play the video, but let me show you. On this site, I linked to. Did I? Oh no. Okay, we're gonna fix this. Steve Sanderson at NDC Melbourne did an awesome keynote. No thanks. There we go. So, oh, come on. So yeah, here, let me add this video to the website, because his video, his is more about like the history of AI, and then the last half is similar to a lot of stuff we did. But yeah, in the last half, he has some functions where he has a method that calls a REST API to get information about a sports team. So I'm kind of going off the cuff and I'm riffing a little bit, but if I remember correctly, he did something like, let's come all the way back up here. And definitely double check this for me in the video, but like it was something like team ID, and then I think he just also added that description here. So like ID of the, I forget, it was like I think it was an Australian football team. And so basically what he queued up a couple methods like one would call an API to get the IDs of Australian football teams from a website, and then it would make another API call from another method to get back like the latest scores. So yeah, this totally works. And as we're chatting, I'll add this to the website so you can check it out. Like I said, it's like the last half of his talk from NDC Melbourne. Good question. Thanks for reminding me.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just going to copy paste here. Yeah, whenever you're ready.
All right. So let's imagine I have a bunch of methods in my view models, right? And I want that to invoke all that methods. Can I pass the, I don't know, the class view model?
Yeah, you just keep adding them in there. And
That will be a lot.
yeah, I don't know. It'll figure it out. I don't know if there's a limit. It might just take longer, but you can see like it was pretty quick. So
Yeah, because I'm thinking I was using semantic kernel, and then with semantic kernel you can just add the class type, and that will figure all the.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like add the class and say every
class
method.
Type, yeah.
Oh, maybe, because I know a lot of this was inspired by semantic kernel. So maybe. Like I said, I'm really good at AI.
I also have a question. You were initially, I'm not a .NET developer, so maybe it's just like I misunderstood. But initially, when you were setting up the connection from the code to the chatbot, which is like up there somewhere in the cloud,
Yeah.
you were using this Microsoft.Extensions.AI library, and that made it seem like it's fairly easy there to switch in between the models afterwards. Like, okay, I can use Microsoft now. Eventually, I can switch to AWS. So, but there you are providing your own API token, so like you get paid, billed for what you use.
Yeah,
However,
I just spent a lot of money.
but then when you executed the unit testing, which was like, oh, this is quite interesting. However, that's then directly bound to Microsoft, right? So, and it didn't seem like you were using still the same connection. So it's like if I would be using AWS, and then I would like to use this very interesting testing method.
Yeah.
Like, can I do that somehow?
Absolutely. So yeah, the way these evaluators work, it's got a local model included. So when I say IChatClient get response async, that's what I'm paying for. So like that's going to my Azure OpenAI, getting the response back, racking up the bills. But when we say evaluate async, that all happens locally. So this isn't going anywhere. That's not leaving. So you can run these tests, and it'll even cache a history too. So if you're running these tests multiple times, then it remembers, and so it'll be a little quicker. But yeah, this evaluate async, don't worry about those. Those are free.
That's super cool.
Good question though. That's important because yeah, the bills add up on this stuff. Thank you. What other questions? All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you around.